Hello.
Well, hello there. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing okay.
I wanted to be able to see the chat room, but I've discovered on my iPad I can't do two things at one time.
I've discovered in life I can't do two things at one time.
Yeah? It's been an interesting trip, I'll tell you. But lots of people in this hospital going to be listening.
All right. Good deal.
Yeah. Yeah. They've been coming in, getting their links.
Right on.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Did you already call the guys?
Oh, am I supposed to call them in?
Yep.
Oh.
By their telephone numbers.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well.
So do Jerry first.
Okay, let me find the right piece of paper here. You wouldn't
In the
believe.
meantime, I'll say hi to everybody out there and assume they're saying hi back because I can't see. And kind of fill you in a little bit while he's dialing the numbers there. It does sound like I'm probably going to have surgery tomorrow instead of Friday, which I'm glad of. The sooner the better. And it's going to be a couple weeks before I can talk, if then. So we'll have to have people filling in with Mike and helping him out. And possibly Pink, if you're listening, you can offer to do some helping. And I have another lady, too, that can help you guys out.
Right on.
And we'll try to keep up with our guests, and we'll just try to keep going normal here until we can come back on the air and talk. This is one thing that I will do with the surgery is take a chance on losing my voice box. So we're hoping that that's not going to happen. And I'm already looking for different types of technology that might help me with that problem. Anyway, so it looks like things are going to go okay.
Obviously, I'm dialing one in.
Okay. I see that you have the numbers system there yet. Had a very interesting time this afternoon in prayer. It was pretty cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And actually, Deanna's one of them that wants to help you out a little bit over there, and she's quite a prayer warrior.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, she was working on the other show with us. And so that was kind of nice.
All right, let me try this and see if it will let me do it. Oh, here we go. Okay. It ought to work this time.
Hello.
Hi, Jerry.
Hey, Cassie. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm hanging in there just like you. Jerry, by the way, folks, has also been suffering this week. He got double pneumonia, so he was in the hospital too. So you understand that Satan's fighting real hard not to have this show happen tonight. But
well,
he loses.
It's kind of ironic that we both end up in the hospital, you know.
Yeah, same time.
I hope you recuperate very quickly, Cassie. I really do.
I'm sure I will. I'm sure
All
I
right,
will.
ma'am. We're not on the air yet, are we?
Yes, we are.
Okay. I would like to, if it's all right, if we can do it somehow without giving the number out for a contact to be for Robert Straley to come aboard with us, Kathy, to help out a little bit.
No, that might be tricky because can you do it, Mike?
Um.
Can you put something on mute or?
Actually, I think I can, but give me just a second to make sure I got it.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Could I give you the phone number, sir?
Yeah, just as soon as he gets it on mute.
Okay.
Just hang.
Okay,
Oh,
so
dear.
when I have that muted, you guys can't hear me, so I'm going to mute this right after I shut up, and you guys can give me the number. I didn't realize you couldn't hear me.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
I'll
go ahead
type
now.
Has been.
Okay, now he's dialing the number, so we got to be quiet.
Hello, this is Robert.
Hi, Robert. This is Kathy.
Hi.
How are
I'm
you?
so sorry to hear you're in the hospital. I can't believe you're doing that from a hospital bed.
Got to take every shot you can get these days.
Yeah.
Okay,
How do
we
I
got to
sound? Do
dial
I
one
sound
more
okay?
number. Pardon?
Do I sound all right on this phone?
Yeah, you sound fine. We got to dial one more number, and then we'll. So we have to be quiet while we dial it.
Yep, only take me a second here.
Okay.
And it should be calling.
Yep.
This is Bill.
Hi, Bill. This is Kathy.
Hi, Kathy. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm doing all right.
So far.
Yeah, so far, yeah. We got all
I
three
heard
of
you were
us
doing
on
bad.
now, so yeah. You know, when you're fighting for God and to do the right thing, you're always going to go through these little trials.
There you are.
But that's all right.
That's for sure.
Makes a bigger person out of us.
Right.
I'll have to tell you a joke after the show. I can't tell you on the air, but
Okay.
it's interesting how God keeps us humble. Okay, so we are ready to go tonight. And tonight, who I have with me is Robert Straley. I have Jerry Cooper with me, and I have Bill Price with me. These are three young men. I'll say young because they're my age. Who I'm guessing this was in what year, you guys?
Late
you went in?
50s, early 60s.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
They went into a home called the White House Boys Home now. And what it was an orphanage type of a thing for wayward kids that didn't behave or that their parents didn't know where to put them, couldn't take care of them. And things went on in this home that were pretty bad, and I'll let the guys talk to you about that. And this home was quite largely attended with different Congress people and other types of professionals. And so I'm going to let the boys go ahead and tell their story here, you guys.
Kathy, I don't mean to interrupt you, but actually, we are actually stayed in a state reform school in the Panhandle of Florida. At the time, was the largest reform school in the United States.
Right. Yeah, that's why I was just going to say I'm going to let you guys take over now, so I don't use my voice too much tonight.
Okay, me either. Bill, go ahead and talk a little bit and tell them what we have done and what's happened to us here recently, and we'll just sit by and listen, buddy.
I think we should probably start from the beginning, though, Bill.
Were you talking about how I got there and
yeah, because
what I was there for, and then
a lot of these people don't know about that place.
Right, and then we can elaborate on how how we were treated and everything while we were there.
Right.
Well, I was there. I had a bad childhood. I had 4 stepfathers before I was 13. and every one of them were abusive. So I ran away from home. And that was the reason that I was sent to Mariana at the age of 13. And they sent me, and at the time, it wasn't, from my knowledge, it wasn't a reform school. It was a Florida school for boys, or Florida industrial school for boys, where they were going to take boys and help them, runaways, truancy, talking back to their parents, incorrigible, things like that. That's what they were in there for. Occasionally, you'd have somebody in there for taking a car and going joyriding or something. But there were no real criminal types at this school.
Right.
And they were going to take the kids and, I guess, teach them some kind of a trade and help them, to be a part of society. But, and when I first got there, I thought the place was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, the campus was clean, mowed. It was not dirty. I mean, it was just a nice looking, it looked like a college campus. It really looked good. But looks can be deceiving.
Amen to that.
Yeah, we were there. I was there for 3 days, and I was told that I had disrespected one of the cottage fathers. What I said, this has been 55 years ago, so I couldn't tell you. But they said that I had disrespected a cottage father after 3 days that I was there, and they took me to this little white building that had these small windows in it. They had the doors, one on the side, one on the end, and they carried me down there. I had no idea what they were carrying me there for. Of course, I had listened to boys talk about the White House, but, So they carried me in, and they take you, and they have an Army-style cot that has the wire springs in the bottom of it with a thin 2-inch mattress that goes on it. And then they had like a 1-inch thick or 2-inch thick pillow that was on there. And it had a round headboard on it. And they tell you to lay on this bed. Of course, when we first got in there in the White House, they went and they turned on a big industrial fan that was super, super loud. And they tell me to lay on this bed and grab this rail, turn my head to the wall. And they started beating me with this 36-inch leather strap, or 30-inch leather strap. That was real heavy gauge leather that had a small piece of metal pin sewed in between two pieces and to give it a little bit of rigidity. And they gave me 25 licks with that, and I'm talking about hard. This was over the head with all this guy's might. And when they finally finished with me, I thought this guy was going to kill me. But when they finally finished with me, and, of course, you're not going to sit down right away. So they tell me to go back to my cottage, which I did. And when I got to my cottage, the first thing that I did is go take a shower. And
were you bleeding?
Course, all the other boys, after the beating, yes.
No, were you bleeding then?
No, not in the first time that I went down there in the 25. No, ma'am.
Okay.
No. And but I'm I don't know anybody there. I'm by myself. I've only been there 3 days and 13 years old.
How old? 13.
I'm there because I ran away from home.
Sure. Yeah.
So my first inclination is, I step out of abuse and I ran away from it, and now I step right back into it again. So I think from the time I got up off of that bed that first time, I started planning getting away from there, running away.
Boy, I can understand that.
So about a week later, I had no idea where I was going. Nothing about that place up there or anything, but there were no fences. Run if you want to. And I hit the woods. I ran away. Because, I ran away from the abuse once. I'm going to do it again.
Amen.
So I ran away, and I went to a little town called Chipley. I got a ride with an older woman, and she stopped at a service station to get some gas. And when she stopped at the service station, I'm sitting in the car waiting on her, and the sheriff's car pulled up. She went inside and called and turned me in.
Oh.
So they carried me. They came and picked me up, and they carried me back. And when they carried me back, they have a standard that they give somebody who runs away, and that's 100 licks. This time they cut me, and I was bleeding. 100 licks, I think you get 50, 60, and 3 days earlier now I had just gotten 25 for being disrespectful, and I was still black and blue whenever they would beat me the second time.
Wow.
So this time they did cut me, and I was bleeding and had to pull the material from my underwear out of my skin.
Oh my God.
And I had to get help doing that. So,
Isn't it amazing how we treat each other? I just can't get that in my mind.
That's only part of it, too. Tell them about how many dead boys we have, Bill, at this time.
Well, the state records that they had showed that there were 31 dead bodies buried on that campus. And when the University of South Florida was allowed to go in and exhume the bodies, they actually found 55 grave sites with 51 bodies in those grave sites, which some of them were commingled because of the fire. But there's 20 boys additional that they found that were not even on the state records.
Wow.
And not one boy's grave, not one, even of the 31 that they had recorded in their books, none of them were marked.
Oh,
no boy knew where they were from, who they were, and how they got in the grave.
So their parents would never know either.
Exactly.
Wow.
There were a lot of parents.
Kathy, Bill also mentioned a lot of times when the parents would inform the school that they hadn't heard from their child by letter, they would tell them a lot of times, Kathy, that they had run off.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, that they had run away. And actually, if you see him, please give us a call, is what they would tell the parents. And so far, I think with DNA testing, they had reunited 7 of the boys with their loved ones, their ancestors. But there are the rest of the boys that are there. They know we're at least 14. There were 7 of them that were killed in a house fire that they know of. And then 7 have been reunited. So that's a total of 14. And all the rest of them, no one knows who they are.
And were there a lot of boys that came and went that nobody ever knew them?
Well,
they just
yes
kind
and
of
no.
disappeared anywhere?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Anytime that you would, it was really strange because Erin Kimmerly, who was the forensic anthropologist with USF, she said in one of her reports that the children were found, if you laid somebody in a grave, you're going to find them in repose. Either their hands crossed across their chest or they're down by their side.
Right.
But they found them laying in these holes with their hands over their heads and on their sides with their legs and all askew, where they were just thrown in a hole and covered up.
My my God.
And it was just really bad. And then they also found, while they were digging in the same graveyard, they found bones of dogs and peacocks. And in the last report, they even found a bag full of hypodermic needles. And all of this stuff was found in the graveyard buried with the kids.
And who was doing all this?
The staff, Kathy.
And who were the staff?
Oh, yes.
The staff were hired
most of them were deceased.
Local staff that worked there in that county and also the city of Marianna.
And then who hired them?
The
state of
state.
Florida.
Okay.
And most of them didn't even have an education, plus no training to care for boys or to care for any juveniles that, needed any kind of help or anything like that. None of them had any kind of training in that area. And if they did have somebody who came in that did have some kind of training, they could not stand the brutality. They walked away from the place and they would say they are absolutely brutal with those children. I cannot stand that. I have got to get out. And they would leave.
And they wouldn't turn it in?
They did turn it in. There were several times.
Kathy, this went on from 1900 until 2011, when that school was shuttered by the Justice Department.
So from
they had just about every governor go in and have a problem with that place. In 1967, they had the governor go in, in a surprise inspection, and he actually made the statement to the press when he walked out, if the parents knew how their children were being treated, they'd be up here with rifles.
Quote unquote.
Somebody should have blown the whistle on this place a long time ago.
And this governor didn't do that either. He was supposed to have
stopped the beating. He was supposed to have he did stop the beatings. He wanted to close the White House where they were beating the children. And so he stopped the beatings.
And
but
how many of our congressmen were involved in this stuff?
None. At one point, they had a who was Byrd? He was a psychologist.
Yes, he's the one. He's the one, Billy, that went to Washington and met with Congress, demanding them take some kind of action because of the brutality.
He actually sat in front of the Congress and told them that these people were absolutely brutal to these children. Absolutely brutal.
And what did the Congress do?
And they didn't do anything.
So they're complicit.
Yes.
Well, and were they taking money? Were they being paid?
Well, yes, there was a lot of stuff going on at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were many.
Robert, 50s and 60s.
Billy, is Robert still there? Let him talk on some more about this.
Yep.
Oh yeah, especially on the money thing, Robert.
Yep.
Right. Well, there were many investigations, but it just never seemed to go anywhere. Our own president of the Senate, Louis D. Laparte, went up there and came back and described a blood-splattered shed and called for an investigation, but he was overpowered by Dempsey Barron, who is a legislative powerhouse. There's so many witnesses. Andrew Bowers was a chaplain there from 59 to 63, and he said Dozier freely practiced flogging as a method of discipline or as a matter of whim. They'd spank the boys when they did wrong or whenever they wanted to. And many beatings were administered with a weighted leather flogging strap. These were no spankings. Troy Tidwell, the last remaining whipmaster, testified before the lawyers, was deposed by the lawyers, and said that he never raised the whip over his head, and he never gave them more than 15 gentle spanks, and he put his hand up to his shoulder and like he just gently spanked them. The man jumped up off the ground practically to hit you, you know, and that was the biggest lie, and just to outrage so many of us. One of the supervisors there gave the best description I ever read of what happened. One of the guys came and said, "You need to see this," you know, and he went in there, and they were fixing to whip a boy, and he said a young boy was taken into a barely lit room where he was compelled to lie on a small cot and receive licks with a heavy leather strap. The strap was wielded by a man who was at least 6'3" tall and weighed over 200 pounds. His swing could be likened to a strong tennis serve with a whip-like effect at the end. The results are sickening. The child quivers and writhes in a contorted manner from the pain of a sadistic treatment, not only repulsive but somewhat criminal in nature. Now, I never got the terrible beatings that Billy and Jerry got, thank God. You know, I only got 35 to 40 lashes on my first day there. And yes, the place was beautiful when I got there. And you were supposed to have a document. Every boy was supposed to have a document signed by a judge, further signed by a clerk of court, what you were charged with, how long you were to be sentenced there, and so forth and so on. Many of us went up there without ever going before a judge. They just took us right from the juvenile home, wherever we was, and took us straight in there, and that's what happened to me. And I sat down next to some boys that had just got there like myself and were in state clothes, and they were talking about running and asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, no, it's not as much fun as you would think. I've been on the run for weeks, and I'm tired. But somebody told on us, so I got gathered up along with the rest of them, and I won't go through what Billy just said because it's the same thing, you know, basically. I was at the end of the line, which was the worst place you wanted to be because you were going to hear all of the grunts and groans and screams and cries that you could still hear through that fan. And by the time they got to me, I was in shock. Now, I had temporal lobe epilepsy. I wasn't supposed to be beaten in the first place, but I didn't know that. I didn't know what I had at the time. I didn't get diagnosed till years later. And so it was a pretty bad experience for me. Troy Tidwell, the one-armed man that whipped so many men, came in the middle of the night twice, woke me up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning out of a sleep, sat down on my bed, grabbed my arm, told me to come with him, took me in the front room, and then told me, you were smoking. And if you tell me you weren't, you're going down. Well, down I went, you know, and that was very scary without even another boy. And there was another man with him that I never really knew who he was. And the law at the time was that the board of law did not permit beating or corporal punishment for adults in jail. It did allow children to be whipped, paddled, or strapped, but it's supposed to be done as if applied by a loving parent, and it was not to be severe. Well, those beatings were way beyond severe. You know, they really broke every law. You don't, when you have to carry somebody to the hospital or they're bleeding so bad that their shoes are filled with blood, that's not a gentle, loving parent doing that. These men may have been good men at one point, but they turned into sadistic monsters. And way back in maybe 1907, when they brought in their first really good cash crop from the farm, they realized they didn't have enough kids to really run a bigger farm. So the Honorable Judge Milton wrote the legislature asking them that boys be picked up for smaller infractions like smoking, skipping school, misbehaving. Their parents could ask them to be taken there.
They needed the labor force. Kathy, they needed the labor force. That's what he's trying to tell you. We were nothing but slaves.
One black man said, I talked to him, and I said, how long were you there? And he said 5 years. I was 11. And I said, well, what did you do? He said, I skipped school. And he said, I never could understand why they beat me like they did when I never stole nothing. And I thought, my God, you know. And another boy was there 5 years for stealing a bottle of Coke off a Coke truck. And many instances of that. In Professor Aaron Kimberly's report, I think it was 6 to 8 black boys came in at 1 month, the beginning of 1 month, and they were dead by the end of a month.
Yes.
And from 1940
Oh, my.
on, from 1940 on back, it just got worse. And Jerry found an article from 1918 that spoke about what it was like back then, and it was very bad. I thought I had that here somewhere. Just give you a little bit of it. And this is the Department of Health going in there in 1918, and this is the man talking. He said, "As unpleasant reading as it is, the sewage at the school is imperfect. There are no sanitary regulations enforced. Screens are broken, and flies, mosquitoes, and fleas are prevalent. There is no linen for the beds. The mattresses are dirty. The beds are made on the floor. There is no night clothing for the boys, and they must lie there sick and miserable, entirely naked, and no washing is done for the boys." This is when they had an outbreak of pneumonia, I think, going on. There were 30 boys like this. They said they are dirty and fed improper food and did not have enough food.
Oh, my.
And, and they were fed stuff like hoe cake, which is sort of like a pancake with bacon grease gravy over it for a meal. And what kind of nutrition is that? Professor Kimberly found by going into some of the partial skulls of boys, there's something in the ear that will tell you if you've been nutritionally denied the right type of food and your growth was stunted. And she found that in many of the boys. Many of the boys they found in those
and the
graveyards
dental.
at the age of 12.
And the dental was it was terrible.
Yes, yes.
Because
And
most all of them lost their
performed a lot
teeth.
of, circumcisions, boys that were 12 or over, for what? You know, a lot of things they did didn't make sense. They had a doctor named Dr. Souza who went over to the cattle farm and collected red bone marrow at the slaughterhouse, took it back, mixed it with a chemical of his own device, and fed it to 2,200 boys because he
I was one.
needed this to strengthen his blood count. He wasn't
It's supposed to
getting enough
alter his brain pattern.
Yeah. And then he
Okay,
also
now
put
you've
him
just
on-
answered a question for me. Because out there in Oregon, what just took place out there, the bones that they found in those caves out there, all of the bone marrow had been stripped from them bones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he also used ultrasound therapy. Now, he studied under a famous German Dr. Kunert about with ultrasound therapy. And then after a war, he ended up in South America and then made his way to the little Blackwater town of
And
Mariana.
he studied
And, he studied ultrasound therapy.
in Germany in the 40s.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, let me add something to that, Kathy. With Bobby, let me add something about Dr. Souza. In research that I've done, Souza, coming, I believe, from Austria, at one time was under the Nazi doctrine for nearly 3 years.
Good grief.
Right, and we think that he may have put some sort of drug in there. What was the name of that drug, Jerry?
Thorazine.
Well, he used to feed. He
Thorazine.
fed me Thorazine, and it kept me in a stupor to keep me from running away again after I ran the second time.
Jeez.
Yes,
And I was
with
fed
this
that for like
ultrasound
2 months.
therapy, he had created the perfect note to where he could rid boys of juvenile delinquency. The guy was mad. And yet they had all this
Yes.
equipment. I have pictures of him on my website of him using it. I called the Federal Food and Drug Administration, and they said that should never have happened. It was totally against the law to do either one. And there was we could find no medical license for Dr. Souza. We could find no medical license for Dr. Wexler that I worked under in the state
That's
of Florida.
true.
I had
Well,
somebody...
and the thing about it was, Robert, in the early 50s or late 50s and early 60s, when Sousa was there, he had an EEG machine that was state of the art. And it probably cost a lot of money. Where did they get the money for him to have that kind of equipment?
Well,
at that time?
Who knows? I know that the 1,000-acre
that's a lot of money.
They had, when it was really going, they had a brick plant. They had a brick plant that knocked out 25,000 bricks a day. They had a sawmill where they did timber, and the boys ran the sawmill, which was very dangerous. They turned out produce by the ton, sugar cane, every kind of potato and corn and meal, hogs, beef cattle.
And they did all the printing for Tallahassee, didn't they?
Yes,
yes, they did.
$50,000 a year just for the printing they did for the government. They did other printing as well. So there was millions of dollars that was churned out by this farm over a period of I'm not sure how many years, but 40 years at least. And, of course, they were raking off of this farm. The people would come in and fill their trucks up. Boys saw that in the kitchens. And they took stuff down to the railroad tracks in town and loaded them onto box cars. They took them to the feed store in town. They farmed the boys out to pick crops at all of the farmers' fields around there, which was absolutely against the law. They were not supposed to be hired out at all. So they took an awful lot of money, came off of that farm, skimmed off right off the top. And
why do you think nothing was ever done, Kathy? You got to understand, it was a profit farm. It was profit.
Yeah.
And they were going to keep that in any way, manner, fashion that they had to do it.
Sure.
That county depended on that school for its complete assetted value to carry that whole county. At one time, there was over 200 employees at that school. And you don't think for one instant that they're going to let go of a sugar bowl like that, do you, Kathy, without a fight?
That's right. That's why I was asking about the money.
We go into a sadder time, if you want to hear it.
Yeah.
When you put 750 to 800 boys and you concentrate them in one area, you know what that's going to attract. It's going to attract pedophiles.
Yes,
absolutely. And there were pedophiles who worked on the campus, who were off the campus. Some boys were delivered to them, on weekends and evenings. And a lot of them worked on the campus and abused the boys sexually there on the campus. They even had a place they called the rape room where they carried boys and did that.
Yes, Lennox Williams, he was a big proponent of corporal punishment, and he was interviewed by Ben Montgomery. And first he tried to just wishy-wash the beatings, and then Ben reminded him of his testimony in a former court case, and then he had to tell the truth, and he asked him, did the beatings ever got out of hand? And he answered, he said, yes, they did, and then he added, he said, I believe there were people on the staff that enjoyed the beatings. And I'm quite sure of that because looking at Tidwell, you could see just a look of sadistic satisfaction on his face. I hated that man. I really did. And
you and 800 other boys.
Yeah, right. Howard James, I'm reading a book right now called Children in Trouble. He was writing for the Christian Science Monitor. He won a Pulitzer Prize for Crisis in the Courts, which is about juvenile homes. And he went around the country and looked at homes that did that. And right on the back of the book, Dozier's mentioned, But he said something, and this is true in all cases, and certainly was the case at Dozier. He said the major problem with the type of people attracted to the jobs are sadist homosexuals, dull workers who can't find work anywhere else, and those who care deeply about children. And James told the Dodd Committee most fall into the third category, and that was dull workers. And that was it.
Yeah, and the sad
Let me
part about
add-
it was there were some good people that came in there to work there, but if they did not conform to their way of thinking, they ran
They
them
were
off.
gone. Yes, they did.
They ran them off.
Yeah.
They
Billy-
couldn't have anybody
Billy-
there that was going to feel sorry for the boys.
Billy,
Yeah, I had a
Before we
brother
leave-
cottage.
Bobby, before Bob, Billy, Bob, yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Before we leave this subject, I just got a report, and I think I spoke to you about it earlier today, Robert. Kathy, what we'd like you to know in the public is that this, for the last 6 to 8 months, the FDLE, Florida Department of Law Enforcement, here in the state of Florida, have conducted what we call a sexual investigation of the White House boys that were there during the 50s and 60s. Now, I have a list here. I have the men's names. I know where they're at. I know what they went through. And I'm going to go down this list and show you how many men and what they had to say about their sexual abuse, but I cannot give you their names, and I'm sure everybody understands that.
Yeah.
So if you'll bear with me, let's go to the top of this list, and it says the man's name, of course, to the left, and in the right column all the way, were you a sex abuse victim? Number 1 says yes. The perpetrator is Mr. Tidwell. Number 2, yes. Cottage father, who was in Robinson Cottage. The next one says attempted sexual assault by staff. The very next one says, yes, I was sexually molested by Mr. Cole, an instructor at the school. Next, yes, by a Mr. Mitchell, who Mitchell at one time, I remember, was the acting superintendent at that school. The next one, yes, by Mr. Cox. No questionnaire form, but notes say no. Yes, by Dr. Curry. Next one. Attempted sexual assault. Next one. Yes, by Cottage Father. Yes, by Bud White, a Mr. Crockett and a Mr. Jenkins. Yes, by Cottage Father. Mr. Pender and another Cottage Father who he does not recall his name. Yes, by 2 men that were with Mr. Troy Tidwell that night. Yes, by an inmate, Wesley, while Crockett observed a staff member. Another one, attempted a sexual assault. Yes,
No.
by Mr. Troy. You want me to go on?
I just have a question. What does
There
it
were
mean when
90.
it says attempted?
Do what?
What does it mean when it says attempted? They
Probably
didn't-
probably was able to be like myself if I would have been assaulted. I weighed almost 180 pounds. I was a jock. If you think you're going to get me in a room, I don't care if you're staff or anybody else. You better bring a lot of help.
Okay.
You follow what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, like myself,
you know-
Billy was my kicker on the football team. I was a quarterback. Billy, right now, what do you weigh? You must have weighed 175, 100. They're
Yeah.
not going to jump
I
on.
weighed
They're
about
not going to
170
jump on.
pounds when I was,
Yeah, they're not going to jump on us for sexual assault. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
most of them were the weaker boys.
They get the boys. They get those boys from 10, 12, 13, even up to 14 years old. And I know for a fact that these kids were molested not only mentally, physically, and sexually while they were there. And when the Justice Department fired 2 letters over Governor Scott's head here recently, when they closed it and said, Mr. Scott, Governor Scott, if this thing isn't taken care of, we have no problem, sir, of coming back and opening up another investigation. Well, a month after that, that school was shut down totally and completely. And the Justice Department stated this in their letter to him. You people that run that school and the state of Florida are doing no more than turning out young men who will be a danger to the society when they leave there, and most likely will offend again and again and again. And it happened. It happened over and over and over.
That's right.
Now, I may sound angry. I may sound mad. I'm mad. Go ahead, Bill.
All of these whippings turn to anger and then rage, and that's something that most of the White House boys have. They never told anybody, not even their spouses, about it. I never told my wife of 15 years, but I have a rage problem, and so does Jerry, and many. And it just does that, because first it's helplessness. You're helpless, you're 13, and then cowardice, you didn't fight, them, and then anger, and that just finally all ends up in rage, and you end up doing life-threatening things. I used to go cliff diving and jump off 50-foot cliffs and swim out a mile into the ocean by myself, and I was doing this just to prove to myself that I wasn't afraid.
Yeah.
It's stupid. Just stupid.
They're definitely your learning years when you were subject to so many different things coming at you, and when hate and abuse is what you're taught at that age, when you leave out of there, you take that with you.
Yeah.
And most of the men ended up with 2 and 3 wives. They have children that won't talk to them because of them being abusive to them when they were children. And they've gone through their whole life suffering from everything that they did that wasn't their fault.
Sure.
And this thing was
what they learned.
Generations, One lady called me up and she said, well, at least now I know why my husband beat me and my daughter so badly with his belt. And I said, oh, you see, your husband was at Mariana? And she said, no, his father was. The Dozier, the Florida School for Boys, the Florida Industrial School for Boys, the Florida Reform School, all of those names, the boys just called it Mariana.
Sure.
Right.
That was it.
Well.
And it was the little ones that caught the most of it. They did a survey, and it was the boys from 11 to 7 that got the most beatings, and because they weren't afraid of them. When they took in somebody Jerry's size or Billy's size, they'd take 3 big men in there. I had a friend that was at 15 that was 6'5.5" and weighed 190 pounds.
And if you didn't hold on to the bed, they would go over to the chow hall, which was right next to where the White House was, and get 2 or 3 of the boys to come over and hold somebody on the bed and hold them down while they beat them.
Yeah, I had one of the men.
What they did, they did me 100 licks when I ran away. And what they end up doing, when if you, after like 40 or so, you become numb on your butt.
Yeah.
And and they know that. So after they do that, then they start moving up your back and down your legs.
Yes, that is the most terrible thing you ever had in your life. That is the most terrible beating you can take. I don't care how tough you are. You're not tough when you're laying on that bed and being held down and somebody's drawing the blood on you and cutting you left and right. Pieces out of your skin as big as a nickel.
Wow.
As big as a nickel, Kathy.
God.
I just wanted to step in.
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to step in and say we apparently we have Gary Rice in the chat room that is speaking to us as well and letting us know some of the stuff that went on there.
Gary Rice, do you know?
Oh, Gary?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, welcome aboard, Gary. You there?
He's in our chat room, the YouTube chat room.
Bring him on if he wants to come on.
Tell Gary, he was actually in the sister school, which was Okeechobee. And in 1958, they had overcrowding in Mariana. So they decided to open another school.
Gary?
Yeah, if he wants to come on, bring him on, Mike.
Yeah, if you want to come on, Gary, that's fine. Just let me know if it's the phone number that is listed on the official WhiteHouseBoys.org site, and that way I know what number to call you on.
Jerry, did you not want to say
Yes.
something at the end?
Yeah, Gary's got a private phone again, and you might have to dial him.
Okay.
Yeah. But what
Well,
happened?
Obviously, he's in the chat room on Skype, isn't he?
Yeah, on YouTube, and he just put the phone number in YouTube.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Oh, okay.
So do we have
yeah,
to be quiet?
now
while
Gary
you
was
dial?
at the
Well, it'd
he
just
was
do
at the second school.
Okay.
it'd
Guys,
just do a
hold
ring
on.
thing.
Just hold on a minute, and we'll be still while he dials that number.
All right.
Sure.
It always does that noise.
It sounds like you're going to sing.
You don't want that to happen.
It's clearing his throat.
Hi, Gary. Can you speak up a bit into your mic there?
Hey, Jerry and Robert. I don't know who else. I heard somebody else in there, but I didn't
This
recognize
is
you.
It's
Kathy.
me, Bill.
Oh, hey, Bill.
It's how you doing,
Robert
Gary?
Straley and Jerry Cooper.
Yeah, I knew it was Cooper. Everybody knows Coop's voice.
Yeah.
And Straley.
Even
You
with
notice I'm-
pneumonia.
You notice I'm awful quiet, Gary. I'm still not up to par. I will tell you. I mean,
Oh,
having this
And we're
no,
pneumonia,
it's
man.
really good. Coming
Yeah.
across.
Yeah, we're lucky.
I'm doing all right. I was glad to see the notice. I've been listening in the entire conversation.
Well,
It's really not a,
I'm glad you were.
I just wanted
You-
to
Were we
make
pretty much
everybody aware.
online?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gary, if you have
Um,
something you want to say.
Hey, Gary,
Yeah.
when we finish talking here, then you can tell them what it was like on the sister school that they opened, you know, to relieve
When they,
the
when they
crowding.
opened up the trophy, it was not real crowded when I got there in '67, but it was. When they eased the crowding from Mariana, yeah, missed on it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a beautiful school. They had built this thing to, it was purpose built, and the beautiful cottage and the buildings were nice. And when I first got there, I had an odd arrival. We'd had a car accident on the way out there, so I got out there in the middle of the night. And the next morning, the atmosphere was so bad. It was just as if somebody had just died. And I found out shortly that was pretty much the case. And they used psychological warfare, something Jerry mentioned earlier. The boys that were, not everybody out there was strong. You're talking probably to some of the strongest guys out there. There were some weak-minded boys that had no business being there, but they were just orphaned. They had no place else to put them. They put them there, and these boys, they beat these boys and relentlessly, and they molested them. Now, they beat me, but I'm with Jerry rather, when they didn't approach me sexually. They just knew. I'm a big guy, 6'4", 220, and they didn't want to mess with me, but they beat me psychologically by telling me about the boys that they had killed or had been murdered or been shot or had been found in the cesspool, had drowned, and they did not pull any punches when it came to the
Hey,
psychological.
Gary, let me interject one thing, okay? Just so they know that when they opened this school down in Okeechobee, the same people that were running the school in Mariana, they put on a bus and sent down to Okeechobee to open and run that school.
Yes,
So
they
it was
did.
the
Thank you,
same
thank you,
people
Billy.
who ran
Thank
the
you.
one school ran the second one. And so the abuse followed them all the way from Mariana to Okeechobee.
They just moved hell 500 miles south is what they did, Kathy.
Pretty bad.
Same-
So they had the same people running both schools.
Yep.
One place where I
Just so
love
you,
the idea of the dead boy. They killed boys in Okeechobee. They beat a boy to death when I was in. They beat me and they locked me down because the boys back in the cottage saw me in the shower, and they wrote home about how bad I looked. And the staff there would tear their letters up and make them write nice, sweet letters about how wonderful everything was. But they learned right quick to put me in lockdown until I healed up, and then they told my parents that they couldn't have visitors and so forth. But the bottom line on that is, to me, is they did not have a graveyard in Okeechobee at first. Now, many guys say that they built one. I don't really know. I never saw it, but I had, of course, heard about it. But the fact is that, to me, the bodies that, if you would, for lack of a better term, extra in Marianna, I believe many of those came from beatings in Okeechobee and murders in Okeechobee, because these men had carte blanche. There was nothing, and I mean nothing, they could not do. And when we went for the the farce of the dogs looking for the dead boys, the town of Okeechobee actually came to me when they realized I was being interviewed locally by the papers, and the people in the restaurant, they were so nice and so apologetic, and they actually said, more than one of them, and all of them agreed that, yes, they knew something horrible was going on out there, but there was just no way to prove it or to bring it out, if you will. So there's no doubt in anybody's mind, and Jerry received an apology from the governor, as did Mr. Fudge and other White House boys. So the understanding is, yes, we were tortured and beaten. I think the only question Florida has is, are they man enough, if you will, or woman enough to step up and make this thing right to all the guys and the horrible lives they lived? They created the very monsters that the people of Florida wanted to see, brought up and trained and made better citizens.
Out of all of them that apologized, did you believe any of them?
Yeah,
Actually, I thought they were really sincere.
Let me interject on that. Kathy, let me interject, please, just for a minute, and then I've got a story when you guys get through talking that I've got to release to you, Kathy, that the media doesn't know about yet, and neither does our state attorney. But in the meantime, when we went to the cabinet meeting on January the 21st, Robert Straley was with me, as well as Bill Price. We had a widow. We had two other brothers that were there. We all spoke straight to the Florida cabinet, including Governor Scott. And when we finished with that meeting, which the people can look at this cabinet meeting online, and you will see that the governor, Pam Bundy, our Attorney State General, our financial director, Jeff Atwater, and our agriculture representative, Mr. Adam Putnam, were sincere when they said, we are sorry for what you kids had to go through when you were children at the hands of the state of Florida, quote, unquote, because they now know, with all the documents that we have performed and worked on. Bobby, you've been with us. We've been together, 9 years on this?
Yeah.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah.
This administration did what no other administration would do. They went in, brought this out of the past into the future or into the present, and dealt with it. And, they voted on the exhumations. They've been behind us, and they're still behind us.
You got to understand, Kathy, we do not blame. I like my cabinet members. I like every one of them, every single one of them. I think they do a great job for this state. But when you're a politician, you cannot please everybody. That's an impossibility. But I know my people that represent us in this state on that Florida cabinet are sincere about trying to help us bring this to a total and complete closure. And that's what we're working on right now.
Now, is a cabinet, Jerry, the same as a committee?
Well, the Florida cabinet, you have cabinets for every state, which include, 4 to 5 members, and I just, told you who our members are, which is, again, Pam Bundy, who is our Attorney General, Jeff Atwater, our Financial Director, the governor himself, and Adam Putnam with the Agriculture Department. And you can't get any higher than that. And I will tell you this much, and I'm not gonna try to say I'm the toughest guy that ever stood, and I'm not. When I got that apology and I sat back down in the crowd, I wept.
Well,
Billy,
I would think
I think you wept a little while, didn't you, sir?
Yes, I did.
We couldn't help it, Kathy.
Well, no, you wait all those years to hear validation because they
I
try to
promise
make
you-
you believe you're crazy.
I promise you that this cabinet, I have all the faith in the world. They just passed a bill for $1.5 million. The governor just signed it last week, appropriated $1.5 million to any family that they do find DNA and they do locate the family, that they will give them up to $7,500 each for burial. The rest of the boys, there will be a memorial erected for these boys, but we do not want them under any circumstance to be located back on that property. We will fight it to the core. Am I right, gentlemen?
That's right.
Yes,
That
absolutely.
is the consensus.
I'm with you.
It was my strong feelings when I talked to Governor Scott and the cabinet, and I told them, you did not take care of them in life, you will not take care of them in death. We
That's
want them
true.
moved.
That's
Yeah.
We
right.
want them buried somewhere else.
Now,
Yeah.
Kathy, when you go into
Without a doubt.
Kathy, years ago when I first started this, even before USF got involved in this, months before, I went in Mariana at night. I spent the whole night in the cemetery called Boot Hill. I was dropped off by another White House boy, made my way across the property, over 2 fences, got to the graveyard. I was there all night long. I had a little sleeping bag with me, and the next morning I could see exactly what I was looking at. And it wasn't pretty. That was before anybody arrived in that graveyard. And I'm going to tell you something. There was graves. None of them were marked. No names, nothing. Nobody knows to this day who was buried where and who they are unless they got their DNAs, proved by a family member. And that's only 7 at this point. We're going to end up, I will guarantee you, with at least close to 50 boys that will never, ever, ever be identified. You're an unknown soldier. But what they did there, what they did to us, even in death, they found one boy 15 centimeters deep. Do you know how shallow that is? 15 centimeters. He was buried on top of another kid.
That
And
was
then
30
they
centimeters.
Yes, and they found a couple of the boys underneath a road they built there. And they were these people were running farm equipment over these kids every day, Kathy.
My God.
They
And
found
under
them under trees, scattered all
Where
over
the
the
trees
place.
had grown up over the graves.
And you think we want them to go back there?
No.
Ain't gonna happen. Not as long as I'm standing. It ain't gonna happen. And they better get it very clear that we will not allow it to happen. But they have decided to hold a panel here in the state of Florida. One of our men, one of the White House boy survivors, will represent one of these positions as soon as this panel comes aboard. This panel is going to decide this. Where will the boys be interned? Go on with it, Robert. Tell them what else.
Well, first they've got to find a piece of property.
Yes.
And they've
The state has a lot of property.
Yeah, and it may be even donated for all we know.
I
But
think they should
have
take it from the
$1.5 million.
BLM.
And when you put it in perspective, they've only had to pay for 7 families, and that's even if they took the full amount, that's less than $50,000 out of 1.5 million. So I went in and looked up under. I googled monuments, and what you came up with were gravestones and that sort of thing. What they're going to end up putting them in is a mausoleum, probably. And I sent some pictures and so forth to Governor Bob Martinez and Senator Bill Nelson and the lawyers. And you can get a mausoleum that will hold 7 caskets, and the remains of these boys are in a box slightly smaller than a shoebox. So they
because they're all powdered, Kathy. They're all so disintegrated. Miss Aaron would go to pick a bone up in one of the graves, and it would turn to dust. That's how bad they were deteriorated.
But these are made
none
out
of them were. They never used any kind of embalming fluids.
Oh, brother!
In fact, didn't they find? They found one grave, and it had a jar of embalming fluid in it.
They actually found a grave, Kathy, where a kid was buried, and there was a couple of canisters of embalming fluid. You know what they did? They just threw it in the grave. They threw the bottles in the grave with the kid. Give me a break.
Jeez.
I mean, these are proven facts, documented facts.
Thank God.
Also,
Thank God
I don't know
that
if
God says in the Word that vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, because He will pay back far better than we ever will.
Yeah. They also found in one of those graves triple-aught buckshot in one of the graves where the body had deteriorated and the buckshot fell out of the body.
Yeah,
well,
that was inside the coffin.
Yeah. Also, tell them about the empty coffin, Bobby.
Yeah, Professor Kimberly thought that one of the boys might have been murdered, and so she went up to Pennsylvania to talk to the family and got them to approve disinterring the body. But when they took the body up and the coffin up and opened it up, there was no body in it. There was just boards to weight it down. And they couldn't believe it. They even took the boards out in the bottom of the casket, and there was the grandmother's casket underneath. So there was no body in there to begin with.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. How many of these kids went disappearing? And, I think I told you last time when I had you on my show, I was doing an investigation at that time of the trafficking of the children. And I believe that Florida, that was a stopping point right there before they shipped them overseas. So that school definitely was involved in that.
Anybody could parole a boy out from Mariana. All they had to do was sign a paper and take them off.
Yeah.
And they took off those boys that were, 8, 9, 10 years old. Makes you wonder what hell did they end up in?
Amen.
One ended up in a coma.
Absolutely.
Well, the boy that
thousands
they beat
of the small boys. We're talking about boys 5, 7, 8 years old. One boy that was an office boy told me a horrible story. He said he passed by 4 kids about 7 or 8 years old that was sitting on a bench crying and peeing their pants, and the guard next to him said, "You can cry all you want, but it ain't going to do you no good when you get to that White House." And I thought, what violence to put on children that age,
How did this affect all of your lives in having children and marriage?
Well, it affected it. Every one of us has done things. I've done things I wish I hadn't done, and it all was over in Mariana,
Yeah.
It really affected your life.
Yeah.
A lot of the men never made it in life. We're the lucky ones. Me and Jerry and Bill, we got out and made something of ourselves, because we just had the drive.
Sure.
Nothing was going to stop us, But a lot of men went to the bottle or went to crime, or it just never really got out of the system. And a lot
there are probably a lot of men that are still in prison right now.
And dead,
that have been all their life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that Florida prison's probably got quite a few of them.
Right.
Yes.
Well, you can believe at any given time there were 750 to 800 boys there.
Yeah, I know. I've been.
Kathy, you guys are reminding me of a letter, if I can speak just a minute. I got a letter in here 2 weeks ago. This White House boy, and he told me, "Jerry, I don't mind you talking about it. If you want to use my name, do, but I am not going to do that again. I know him personally. And he wrote me a long letter. He was also on the list that I was talking about a while ago to be sexually abused. This man was sexually abused when he was very young by these staff members. And it was a continuing thing the whole time he was there. And he spent, I think, 3 years there. He wrote me a letter and said, Jerry, I appreciate what all of you people, all of you men are doing to try to make sure that somehow some of these things can be righted. And I said, well, what is it you want to tell me? He said, I'm going to tell you right straight up. I'm a homosexual. I said, yeah. Yes, I am. I said, you want to talk about it? He said, yeah. He said, when I went there as a young kid, I didn't know what sexual stuff was, but I got taught real quick. Yeah. He said, I got assaulted so many times sexually that I became a homosexual. I'm still a homosexual. I even got married 20 years ago. The marriage lasted 4 months, and I'm a homosexual. And I just felt so bad for this man, Kathy. That is as bad as it can go.
Well, you know what? It proves a point for me, and I've been trying to say this for many years. The reason we have all this sexual assault and done in a homosexual form is to turn all of them into homosexuals. The reason that they're giving us the hormones in our cereals and changing them around, male for male, female for, they're changing them, is for that very reason, because that's what will bring on this country. It's going to bring hell on earth here.
Yes, and I also like to tell you another little story. Let's go back to Troy Tidwell.
Yeah.
I took a polygraph against Troy Tidwell after he did his deposition with the lawyers back in 2008, I believe, somewhere in there. He lied so bad, and the people, the general public back then, several years ago, were beginning to believe that nothing was done to us and that we were all liars. Well, let me tell you what, I sit here for a week, and I thought, how in the hell can I combat this man who is still living and one of the worst predators that was ever at that school? And it hit me. I said, I am going to go take a polygraph against this man. Well, I didn't do it in my town. I called a polygrapher at random in Tampa. I invited the Tampa Bay Times to be there when I arrived, and they witnessed my polygraph, and I passed that polygraph 150%. Did you get over 100 lashes that night in the White House by Troy Tidwell, by the superintendent, and also R.W. Hatton? Yes. Did you have to
He said he never gave over 10.
He said he never gave over 10, okay? All right, the next question. Were you told when you got back to your cottage that you had to wrap towels around your body and 2 sheets and tie them because they didn't want blood in their goddamn beds? I said, yes. I passed it 100%. Well, let me tell you something. That swung it around 360 degrees, Kathy, because I challenged him then publicly in the media. How about you taking one, Mr. Tidwell? And do you know that I witnessed a murder, which Bill was also a witness, who's on the phone right now, of a football player. And when the FDLE were doing their investigation, they finally approached Tidwell about the death of Edgar Elton. Do you know what he did, Kathy?
No.
He took the 5th. He is protected under the 5th as I'm speaking to you right now. He took the 5th Amendment on it. Am I right, Bill?
Yep.
Man.
And why they won't pursue it, I have no idea. But our problem is this. Every time that we sit there and we say we need an independent investigation done on this place, or we need the feds to come in and do an independent investigation on this place rather than have Florida police themselves. They come
Now-
in and say, we're going to do another investigation.
Okay,
But
I
the
have
Florida
to give
Department
you
of
one
Law
little caution
Enforcement,
before we go any
do
further.
you honestly think that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement is going to find out that the Florida did something wrong?
Yeah.
Of course not.
Kathy?
They're going to cover up
Kathy?
all they can.
Yeah. One little caution there, Jerry, before we go any further. We're on radio. Watch the language.
But I don't know. I just get angry. I don't even know what I said.
Yeah. You use
Somebody
God's
wanna
name in
tell me?
vain. We can't do that. You use
Do
the
what?
Lord's name in vain, and we can't do that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well-
I know that God knows.
Maybe he understands. I don't know.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Where was he? Where was he for 100 years when we were being killed and beaten? Hello.
I can't go there. I don't know what to tell you.
I know.
I asked myself
Kathy?
those questions too when I worked in the prison in Honduras. I asked myself questions a lot of times when I saw them boys suffering.
Yeah.
Where are you? But I know
I'm not
he's
doubting.
there.
I'm not doubting anybody's religion in any way, form, or fashion. I'm just telling you. I screamed for God for 30 minutes. I screamed
Sure.
as loud as I could scream. Help me, please help me.
Yeah.
But anyway, Kathy, before you go any further, how long do you have left on the show?
We have 45 minutes about.
Okay, I would like for these men to. I talk too much. I get angry. I talk too much. Let these
Well-
men. Gary, are you still
You said
there?
that right.
Here's my
Gary,
other. Here's a question I have before we go any further. We do take phone calls and questions if you want to take them. If you don't, we won't.
We
would love
don't
that.
have a problem. We'll
I would-
answer any question we possibly can, Kathy.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead then and read the phone number. Let me find it here. So people can call in. If you are wanting to call in, you have any questions for any one of these men or me, it's 605-562-3140. 605-562-3140. And then you have to dial a code 529582. The
And
code is 529582.
I'll have it up on the screen here in just a moment.
Okay, so we'll have to remain silent.
Oh, no,
Again?
no.
Believe me, Kathy, all of the men that have come forward, and like Robert said earlier, a lot of them, their wives, their children, nobody ever knew that they were in Mariana.
Sure.
It wasn't something that you got out of there and you bragged about.
Yeah.
You were
So
too
they
embarrassed
never
to talk
knew.
about it. You were
Well-
too embarrassed.
So, but you can imagine what it takes for a grown man
Yes.
to come out now, and he's got to tell this to his children. He's got to tell it to his wife in order to come out and be able to tell it to the public.
Yeah.
And then you have these ones that were sexually abused. It takes one hell of a man to come out and do that, to be able to relay to the public what happened to him as a child. And it wasn't his fault. But it still takes a good man to come out and say something about it now. And of course,
Amen.
everybody, they sit there when we were kids and nobody believed because
Right.
we were kids.
Right.
And now that we're grown men, all we are is money-hungry old men. And nobody believes again.
When money doesn't count anymore, right?
It never counted. It never counted to me in any way, form, or fashion. I've got a lot of money of my own personal money tied up in this, and I'll never recoup it. But I'm not going to gripe about it. I do not ask for. I do not ask for help. I do what I think I should do as a human being.
Yeah.
Yeah, I notice you have the website up. If people go in, tell them to go in and check. They can click on that Yellow Jacket newspaper.
Uh-huh.
and they can actually see a lot of the things that went on there at the campus and stuff. But
Okay.
what they have to realize is that everything that was put in these papers was staged to make the place look like a little garden home, you know.
Sure.
It was. I mean, if you see how they're dressed, and a lot of boys were not allowed to even be in that paper because they knew that they would act up or do something wrong.
Sure.
And they took the pictures. So, I mean, you know, you see them with white shirts and ties.
Right.
Guaranteed, we never worked around there in white shirts and ties.
Well,
Bobby,
you know,
Bobby,
you've heard of the saying that the whole world is a stage. That's where we're at right now.
Oh, yeah.
The whole world is a stage.
Miss
Oh, yeah.
Rubio,
Uh-huh.
Miss Rubio,
Yep.
would you please let Robert read you a quote that was just in the newspaper, the biggest newspaper here in the state of Florida, the Tampa Bay Times? I would like Robert to quote what Representative Ed Naron and Representative Joyner and Williams agree on, who are legislators and representatives for this state. Robert, will you read that quote from Mr. Ed Naron, please?
Yeah, well, Mr. Narum added that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice have found that more than a tragedy happened at Dozier. And according to the DOJ and the DJJ, in the eyes of any human being with a heart and a soul, the unimaginable happened at Dozier. And this was...
The unimaginable.
Yeah, and Aretha Joyner, now this is the one that started, well, she wrote the new law, and it was passed. And she really summed it up. She said it rights the wrong of a system that not only tolerated abuses, but looked the other way year after year, she said a couple of months ago. We can't change the sins of the past, but we can establish a reminder so that they're never repeated.
Amen.
And that's almost like that. If you, what you forget, you're doomed to repeat. Somebody said that.
Right.
And this one judge, now you have to realize that while we were being flogged, flogging was illegal. This is from April 22nd, 1952, Colorado warden in a flogging court. April 21st, Warden Roy Best of Colorado Penitentiary was indicted by a grand jury Monday in connection with the flogging of 6 convicts in prison last July. The jury also indicted former Deputy Warden Orrin Doolin and 7 prison guards. Best and the others were indicted on 7 counts each. The indictments accused the prison officials of violating the civil rights of the 6 convicts who were beaten with a heavy strap wielded by Best and the guards. And they went to prison over that.
Wow.
And other people that were caught flogging, they went to prison. But we were being flogged in 1963. Kennedy was president. We were going to the moon, and I was getting flogged. You know, it wasn't the Dark Ages.
Right.
They started it the minute it opened in 1900, and when they ended flogging in 1968, they went straight to hog tying. And then they were caught doing that red-handed by that guy, Howard, no, not Howard James.
O.J. Keller.
No, Jack Levine. Now, Jack Levine is still alive. He's very much alive, younger than me, you know, very much so.
I know that name.
He caught them with, the person that he was with was a girl that worked for the Civil Liberties Union. And they filed a lawsuit. And when they did away with the hog tying, then they went to psychotropic drugs. And that's where we saw the boys in 2008 when we went up and did the sealing of the White House ceremony. They opened the gates of the school when Carol Marvin Miller broke the story October 19th. They knew it was all fixing to hit the fan, and so they knew they had to do something. But they didn't call Tallahassee. They just went ahead and did something on their own, and they had a ceremony. And there was 5 of us that went up there, old men, and we got
Okay.
to, say a speech. They unveiled a plaque that said, "We acknowledge the tribulations of the boys," and then they opened the White House, and you could hear people saying, "Oh my God," and "Oh my God, it must be true." And then they took us over to the unmarked graves across the street on the black side. Well, what they didn't know was Brendan Farrington from the Associated Press was there. Was one of their top reporters. Ed Lavendera and Rich Phillips from CNN was there, and of course Carol Marvin Miller was there. And the next day that went nationwide and worldwide, And then the last thing we did December 8th, Michael O. McCarthy, who got the story to Carol Marvin Miller, and he died in 2010. But without him, this may have never happened. He got up on the steps of Tallahassee and asked Governor Christ to investigate the 31 crosses. And he wrote a letter the very next day. Actually, Brendan Farrington, as walking by, heard Michael, listened to it, and went up and said, let me see that paper. I'm going to take it to the governor because I have to go there right now, but I'd like to see him get that. And he took it, and the next day the governor wrote a letter to Gerald Bailey, who got fired recently, and he ordered the FDLE to do the investigation, and the rest is history.
We have callers.
the-
We have callers holding. So can you just hold on a minute now? Because
Yeah,
we're
I'm
on
sorry.
the telephone. Because we're all on the telephone. We're going to
In fact,
have
I'm
a
checking
10.
out. I've talked
Excuse me. We're going to have a 10 to 30 second delay in what you hear and what we hear. So we got to be careful not to be talking over each other. Just listen for
Correct.
that delay, okay? So
right.
we want to put the first caller on, Mike?
Yeah, it's area code 816. Go ahead.
Okay, hello?
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm miserable.
Uh,
I write to Jerry quite a bit,
Okay.
and my last letter to him or email to him was I was just wondering if there's any way that the guys from the kitchen that held me down on that bed when I was 12 years old, as Mr. Tidwell beat the fabric of my clothes into my buttocks. If there's any way we could get those guys, and then after Tidwell got done beating my clothing into my flesh, I went back to my cottage, and there was a Mr. Ingram. It was his first night on duty. He saw my butt, and he saw how I couldn't get my clothes off. And he sent me to the infirmary. And Dr. Wexler pulled the fabric out of my buttocks. Dr. Wexler told me, said, don't tell anybody I'm doing this for you because I'll get in trouble and you'll go get beat again. Yeah, my name's Freddy Smith, by the way.
Okay, Freddie.
All right, Kathy, I can answer that. I remember the letter he sent me. Please, can you hear me now?
Yes, he can.
Okay. I will tell you this, sir. Your man that sent you down to the infirmary, his name is Jasper Ingram. He is 76. He is 76 years old, and he still lives in Marianna, Florida, and he has a phone number that all you got to do is pick the phone up if you want to speak to him and ask for the number of Jasper, Jasper, Ingram. And I remember Ingram very well myself. When I was there, Ingram was a very young man, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
I was on the second busload of children that went from Marianna to Okeechobee. I wasn't on the first; I was on the second. And the reason I got beat is I told John McLeod that if I didn't go to Okeechobee on the first bus, that I was going to haul tail. Well, John McLeod went and told Mr. Tidwell. Mr. Tidwell came and got me, and they took me down, Mr. Hatton and Mr. Tidwell, and they beat me half to death. And I was 12 years old. And let me say my credibility. I was a GS-12 Step 4 with a major government agency. I investigated and fatalities and everything for the United States government. I testified in Senate segment hearings. I was a Vietnam veteran, a proud Vietnam veteran, by the way, for all the draft dodgers. And I'm a good man. I'm a good man.
You know how good it is to hear you say that?
You know why I'm good? Because I have a there's a Kathy Ruth who works in a Veterans Administration hospital in Tomo, Wisconsin. She's finally told me you're a good man. Why are you doing this stuff to yourself? And then I had Dr. Sally Haas at the Leavenworth, Kansas VA hospital that worked with me for 7 years every week. And I showed her, some guy wrote a book on the White House getting beat and all that. I can't remember what his name was. And so I told her, I said, this is what happened to me. This is exactly what happened to me. The fan, the all that. And Dr. Haas is a very Christian woman. And she said, Fred, there's a special place in hell for people like this.
Amen. And it's coming.
Then I went to Dr. Sidney Kroll in Temple, Texas. And I saw her for 7 years. These 3 women saved my life. I was in and out of hospitals with suicide over and over and over again.
Do you take this as from your treat? Do you actually take this as this is what caused these reactions to you? Definitely relates back to the time you were 12 years old. Am I correct?
All 3 of those women will stand up in any court, anywhere, and say that this is exactly what happened to me. I've got post-traumatic stress disorder, chronic and severe.
Jerry, here's what happens. From the time that you are raped, beaten, tortured, any PST type of thing like that, your emotions never go past that point. So
is that why I'm as angry? Is that why I'm as angry as I am, Ms. Rubio?
Yes, it is. But
is that why I'm so aggressive? And no matter who approaches me, I become aggressive.
Yes.
Well, let me say this, ma'am. I with the efforts of these ladies that helped me so much in the Veterans Administration, the state of I asked the state of Florida back when I came home from Vietnam. I said, "Can I get some help? Can I get some help? I need some help." You know, I said, you know, I raced stock cars. I was pretty hotshot race car driver down in Florida. I was pretty good. And you know, and I did all these high risk stuff. You know, I'm just falling apart. The kids that got beat, we were 12 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where your emotions stay until you can somehow look inside and see the goodness that's in you, Jerry. And you too are a very, very good man.
Kathy?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Jerry's a good man. We're all good men. We're all good. I'll tell you what. You know, I'm Catholic, and I like Jesus. I say the Rosary. you know, and we have the passions of Christ. You know, I can't do the sorrowful mysteries. I can't do them. I cannot. I tried to tell a pastor one time. I said, you know, I know what Jesus went through to a degree. I said, I didn't. My flesh wasn't ripped from my bones. But I was beat. I was beat.
Are you being treated for PST?
Mm-hmm.
I take more medicine. I take more medicine than you can shake a stick at, Jerry.
Kathy,
You know,
Kathy,
I'm gonna say something to all of you right now. I want you to hear me really careful. I too am a rape victim. It isn't that I don't understand where you're coming from. I do. But I know that it's a process that we have to go through to get ourselves to love ourselves again. And those women that helped you, they taught you how to love yourself again. And that's
Yes,
what
they
you have
did.
to learn.
Yes, they
Yeah.
did. I'm going to let somebody else get on, but
Okay.
Jerry and the other guys there, I love you guys.
I love you too,
have a
brother.
round
Hey, brother. Brother, we will
I
prevail.
want to say something.
We will
Jerry?
prevail, brother.
Yes, sir.
I just want to let you know something. My name is Bill Price. I'm the vice president. Anytime you need someone to talk to, our phone numbers are published. Call us.
Please.
Oh,
And we'll sit and we'll talk.
I talk to Barb all the time.
Well, do you?
Jerry's wife.
You talk to Babs?
You talked
Yep.
about my wife, and you talked to Bob Baxter, correct?
Yes.
Good.
You guys take it easy, guys.
Bob Baxter's a good man. All of you guys are good men. That's what I
Amen.
stand for.
That's right.
All of
And
you.
hang in there,
Kathy?
guys.
And it's
All
good
right,
talking
buddy.
to you.
Okay.
Hey, Kathy,
Yes.
I want you to understand something about the damage. If I did not take my medication, and I'm not going to hide anything, I have to take what you call Lexapro. Without it, I consider myself a dangerous individual. Robert Straley, who has a high-class temper as bad as mine, he is under medication. And Billy there's no hope for him, so I don't know what he takes.
Okay.
And ma'am,
we
I'm
got
sorry
another
about you
caller.
being raped.
We got more callers.
I am
holding,
off
so-
a different branch of that tree.
Yeah. We got to bring
Yeah.
on another caller, you guys, so be still.
Okay.
Okay, next caller, please, Mike.
All right, we have area code 337. Go ahead.
Okay, area code 337. Hi.
Hi, I'm a Chobe brother.
A Chobe brother.
Oh,
I know who this sounds like. This sounds like Mark Bowman.
nope, you're wrong. You're wrong.
Okay.
I know who it is.
You know my voice. You know my voice.
I know. You live in Texas.
I live in Louisiana.
I know where you're at. Go ahead and talk, brother.
Just keep guessing there, Jer.
I have been through years of therapy. I have been in-house treatment voluntarily. I still cannot trust people. There's a
Amen.
part of me that prevents me from trusting anyone. Now, I was not only abused at Okeechobee, I was abused at home, as I'm sure many of my brothers were abused. I know I'm not the only one. I became a registered nurse. I raised a child by myself. I broke the cycle of abuse. I have 2 wonderful grandchildren, but I find it very difficult to trust people to let them into my life. My question is, do any of my brothers who are online listening, do you have a problem with that? I also take medication.
No, I just tried to explain to the public that probably 80% of us or more, to this day, as old as we are, we have to be medicated to a degree. And some of them are beyond medication. Some are beyond medication. I've got men I can't handle.
That would be me.
Do other brothers have problems trusting people?
Absolutely, you're talking to one.
I've had that all my life.
How about you, Robert?
Oh yeah. You know, I
Yeah.
don't trust anybody really, all the way.
And I, being a woman, don't trust anyone either.
I will say this.
Wow.
I do not like to get around people with authority. It just does something to me that I can't explain. I just don't deal well with people with authority.
It pushes
At all.
triggers in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It pushes the triggers in you.
I don't think it's so much the fact that they have authority, Jerry. It's just that you had some of them that are real cocky and show that authority. And
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
are the ones that are remind you of that time.
Yeah. I guess so,
I mean,
Bill.
they were in a position where they could do anything they wanted.
We've been through hell, ain't we, brother?
Yes, sir.
You know, it's not even so much that they did it. It's that the governor of the state, Claude Kirk, said if your child, and I paraphrase, but he said if your child is in there, you'd be in there with a rifle to get them out. And my question from that day forward to this day is, what in the heck does it take to get people off their butt?
Yeah, I question that all the
Out
time.
of there.
Yep.
I was out
Do
there,
you know
but
how many
I was
people? Do you know how many people had walked out of there and had made statements about the abuse and how brutal and everything they were to the kids and everything else? And people still do not believe. These are people, their own people. These are
Right.
people that, had nothing to do with us other than the fact that they watched us get beaten. And they sat there and they said, I could not stay there any longer. I couldn't stay there while they were beating those kids and abusing them so bad. And still people did not believe that it was happening.
Well, look what's
Or they
happening now.
turned their
If you
eyes,
look
they
at,
didn't want to believe.
yeah, if you look at what's happening in the world today and going on around us, all around us, these people don't want to believe this either. And it's right in their face all day long, everything that's going on.
They closed
What
their
are
eyes.
they going to?
And,
Yeah.
What will they do for us? $7,500 for a burial is a small pittance. I got
Yeah.
an insurance notice. It went all the way up to $10,000, starting out at $2,500.
Oh, yeah, and they had one.
The
They had one legislator that wanted to cut it down to 2,000.
You can't even bury your dog. You can't even bury your dog for $2,000.
I know
What
it.
about like
And they got a
John
legislator.
He's a Republican from Niceville, Florida, and he was asked some questions recently at a meeting he was in. I'm talking recently, like 27th of March, and his statement was, well, let's see how things play out in the court. And I wrote him a letter, if you will, on Facebook, and I suggested strongly that, and he's my age, 65 or so, and he knows full well that all this is played out in the court, and the rhetoric to me is just a thin veil of rotting flesh of teenage boys that the state of Florida is hiding behind when they refuse to come to terms with an amount of money that each boy should get. And I'm going to go a little bit out of the box here, and I'm going to suggest strongly that let's start with a figure of about $2 million for each boy. And if that's too much, I challenge any one of these people to take one beating like we did, just one beating. And
You're
many of
right.
us took
You're right.
several.
You're right. I took 35 licks. I took 35 licks because another boy slapped me. And I called him an SOB. And I didn't use the initials. And I went down for it. The boy that struck me, attacked me, nothing happened to him. Why is the federal government not investigating this Florida atrocity?
Can I intervene Can I intervene on that just for 1 second? Kathy,
Yes,
can you hear
tell
me?
me about this.
I did.
I want these men to stay on the line, Kathy. I'm going to be quiet because
Okay.
I need 15 minutes when these men are through talking that I can make an announcement that the media doesn't even know about, and I will guarantee you that the Justice Department is coming in, from what I learned, on March the 21st of this past month. I have not told the media. I have not told anybody except our congressional senator, Bill Nelson, and I would like to make that announcement on your radio show tonight, if you don't mind, Kathy.
Go for it right now.
I would like to shut my mouth. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you. Thank you, brothers, for sharing your distrust of people. I live alone. I'm lonely. I think people just want to get the best of you. And I'm a very generous man.
Yeah.
And,
Well, stay on the line.
And I try to live a spiritual life, although I wouldn't call myself a Christian, Muslim, Hinduist, whatever.
Well, good.
Hebrew.
Good. But just stay on the line and let Jerry make his announcement. Stay with us, though.
All right.
Okay, Jerry, go ahead.
All right, I'm going to finish this, and I'm going to be quiet for the rest of this session. But this is very
That's
important.
impossible.
Yeah, be nice. Be nice to me. All right? I'll have you put on Lexapro. You understand?
You settle down there and allow Jerry to give me this announcement. I'm
right.
waiting on bated breath.
I've got Okeechobee boys on the line. This is what this is about. Are you gentlemen listening to me?
Yes.
I'm
Okay. All right, Kathy.
Yep, I'm listening.
This is not out in the public yet.
Okay.
This whole 9 years, every newspaper in this state, the Washington Post, the New Yorker, People's Magazine, right on down the line, have stated this. There is yet no proof that any staff member killed a boy or attempted to cover up a death of a boy. Now, let me tell you where I was and who I was with on March the 21st at 1 p.m. in Okeechobee, Florida. I was with Ashley Albright, who is the state attorney representative for the Okeechobee County. Now, Kathy, 3 years ago, I went to the FDLE begging for an investigation of the Okeechobee school because of what these men had told me, being from Okeechobee. And Okeechobee is very important here. And let me explain everything that I have to tell you.
Okay.
I went to Okeechobee in 2012, just before Christmas. I went there because so many of the Okeechobee men had called me and said, Jerry, when are you going to do something for the Okeechobee boys? Everything is Mariana. And I said, guys, one mountain at a time. Now, Okeechobee, let me explain to you how it got opened. It opened around 1958. Am I correct, Bill?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Kathy, when that school opened, we were so overcrowded up in Mariana, 500 miles north, that they took several busloads of the boys who were already at that school in Mariana, Dozier, Florida School for Boys, whatever, and they shipped them down to Okeechobee, Florida. where they had a brand new school to open up. Now, here is the kicker. When they went down there, Mr. Saltz went down from Mariana as the superintendent. Mr. Frank Zitch, who was a very high-profile predator while he was at Mariana, was sent there. A Mr. Emmett Davis, who was another bad predator, was sent there to work. A Mr. Johns was sent there. A Mr. T.J. Thomas Jr. was sent there. So what I would like to tell you about Okeechobee is this. They took the same men, the very same staff, that were killing us, beating us, sexually molesting us, took them down there to open that school. Mr. Saltz became the super. Frank Zitch, second in charge. Now, Mr. Frank Zitch, let me tell you a little story about Frank. Frank Zitch himself was a ward himself at that school when he was a kid. And I cannot imagine in my mind ever of somebody that was a ward in that school went to work for these people. Kathy, hello. Whoa. But he did it. So he goes down there. They beat the kids in the library. They didn't have a White House like we did. They beat them in the library. Am I correct, Okeechobee boys?
Yes.
You were beaten in the library. Okay. When I got these reports from these men back in 2012, and I've been on this for 4 straight years, Kathy, right now, I went to the FDLE. I told them that I know for a fact that there are some children buried on that property near the dairy barn. And please follow me, everybody, please follow me. Remember the dairy barn. I went there in 2012 with another White House boy by the name of Michael Sapp. And I told him, we'll go on a Sunday. I'm going to take this Christmas wreath, and they don't know who I am. I'm just going to tell the guard there that I'd like to take this wreath over to where some of these kids were buried. Everybody follows, right, Kathy?
Yeah.
Okay. His name is Raymond Collins. We had a long discussion. I asked him, and I had the wreath in my hand. I parked my car to where he could not see my tag because my tag says 1 coop. But I'd be damned if he didn't come out of the guard shack talking with me. I told him what I wanted to do. He walks over to my car and goes behind it and writes down my tag number immediately. He comes back to the guardhouse. I'm still talking to him, asking him, is it okay? He said, I'll check it out to see if they're going to let you go in there. I said, okay. So he gets a hold of a gentleman at that time by the name of Mr. Bill Jordan, who is the super at that time that works for G4S, who is a contractor that has a lot of contracts here in the state, you know, over prison systems as well as some of the juvenile facilities. Well, Mr. Jordan told him on the phone, I don't have a problem with him taking a wreath to the cemetery. Okay. And he come back and he said to me, well, Mr. Jordan doesn't seem to have a problem with it. And about that time, another man walks out. His name is Trevor. He had been there since the early 80s. Raymond Collins has been there since the early 80s when Eckert was running this school and not G4S. Well, I'd already been told by Eckert employees, because I'm a heavy player with the Eckert youth crew, they told me behind closed doors, Jerry, there's a cemetery there. There's dead kids. And I went from there. Well, this Trevor comes walking out, and he hears my conversation. He actually stood in the road and said, are you guys talking about where the old kids are buried from the old school? And pointed, guess where? Well, guess where he pointed? Right straight towards the dairy barn. And that's where I wanted to go, Kathy. Well, let me tell you what happens. Bill Jordan all of a sudden gets back on the phone, calls the guard shack, tells Raymond Collins, do not let that man in there. That is Jerry Cooper with the White House boys. Do not let him on this property. So I was told to leave immediately, and I had the wreath in my hand, and I said, Why did he change his mind? He said, I don't know. You'll have to talk to him, Jerry. I said, okay, Raymond. I said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, though. I'm walking across this road. You see those woods right there? I'm going to hang this wreath right there for these kids. He said, you're not. I said, you want to make a bet? And I did it. I went over and I hung the wreath. I've got pictures of it.
Good.
Well, when I got home that next day, the hell hit the fan. Jordan called me and said, what are you doing on my property? I said, your property? I said, I went inside your fences. I was outside the fence. He said, well, I'm going to tell you something. Don't you come back here. I said, well, what's your problem? He said, you don't think I don't know who you are, sir? I said, well, I'm glad you do. I know who you are. Why did you change your mind? He said, I changed my mind because you know and I know what's going on up in Mariana. I said, okay, is that your last talk? Goodbye. I then contacted DJJ. They refused to let me go in. I then went straight to the FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and requested that they do an investigation at Okeechobee. They turned me down flat. I then approached the Okeechobee Sheriff's Department. They agreed to take it on. Well, that has turned to mud. And let me tell you what happened and the announcement I'm going to make to these people on this phone tonight. When I went in to see the district attorney on March the 21st, Ashley Albright, I said, you know, I tried to get the investigator, Captain Roden, who did the investigation for the Sheriff's Department, to come in here and listen to what I had to say with these other two witnesses I have with me. I had two men with me, two White House boys, one from Okeechobee and one of the staff members. Well, Mr. Albright looks me across the table. He said, Jerry, I just had a meeting with Captain Roden. I said, is that right? I said, oh, he beat me to the punch on the same day, huh? He said, yeah, you're all right. I said, I know why he's here. He said, I know you do. I said, yeah. When is he going to close this investigation? He told me it would be closed a year ago this month, which was last year. Last year. He is holding vital records as I speak right now, ledgers of every one of the Okeechobee boys that I cannot get my hands on because he refuses to let me see them. And now let me tell you what else has happened. We had 8 deaths from 1958 to 1967. 8 boys lost their life on Okeechobee property. One they claimed had run off and fell in a septic pool and drowned. A lie. I've got proof that it did not happen that way. I've got another boy, 16 years old, Patrick Gabriel, shot between the eyes when they said he attempted to escape. Did not happen that way. We got a 14-year-old hung, dead. I can go on, but I'm going to tell you right now, I proved to them, and Ashley Albright said it to me in front of 2 witnesses. The death of Sam Williams, who was electrocuted at wee hours of the morning during an electrical storm because they sent him up a pole to try to fix the power, and he was killed instantly the second he touched the primary phase. Now, here's where I got it over them. None of them knew that I'm a journeyman lineman. I worked for C.W. Wright for years. I am not only a journeyman, I was assistant superintendent for overhead power and underground. I knew that there was no reason in hell's acre that a 16-year-old boy should be up a pole. Number one, it is against state law. It is against federal law. And I will tell you right now, anybody getting caught working on a power line who is not trained, fully trained as a journeyman like myself, cannot engage on any power pole, on any power system, because it is privately owned. Now, I asked Captain Roden on his death, I said, I never did tell him I was a lineman. I was just going to let him talk himself out. He says to me, well, Jerry, you know the labor laws were different with kids back then. And I'm thinking, you just keep it on. You keep it on, investigator. You're gonna hang yourself. You're going to hang yourself. Keep it up. And all the time, I'm a lineman. I know the laws. Well, he said, well, due to labor laws, you know, he just got killed, accident. I said, okay. accident. He's dead, right? Yeah, yeah. I said, okay. Show me an investigation of his death. And the phone got quiet. He said, I don't have one. I said, what do you mean you don't have one? The boy died there. He said it was treated as an accident. I said, is that right? So nobody was called? No. Well, I tell Ashley Albright this. Mr. Albright, I need your opinion right here in front of these two men. Tell me your thoughts. He said, well, you're right, Mr. Cooper. It's a second-degree murder. And if I'd have been, quote unquote, if I would have been the district state attorney at that time, every man that was involved that night when that boy died, because they had staff come in there, listen to this, and try to light up a power pole at night with cars. Now, I've got a witness to all this, and he's still living. He was on the pole when the boy was killed. He is still alive, and he's willing to testify. Now, let me say this. The man says this to me, second-degree murder, hands down. And if I would have been the attorney at that time, they would have been charged with second-degree murder. I said, okay, so you're telling me that no investigation, he said, was done, and it was treated as an accident. He said, that's against law. Hello, hello, hello. Now, I want to contact the newspapers to say, guess what? We have now an admittance from a state official that this is a second-degree murder and was tried to be covered up. And it's very easy to see. Any idiot can see what happened here. Now, that to me sets precedents of some of the other deaths at that school, as well as Mariana. I'm going straight to Pam Bundy, who I already told you is our state attorney next week. I'm going to Tallahassee in front of her, and I'm going to demand, since this is a cover-up, it is proof the man has admitted it, you need to contact the Justice Department or Governor Scott and get them in here to investigate this thing properly. And by God, that is a good foot to stand on. Am I right or wrong, Okeechobee? Am I right or wrong?
You're right.
I guess
You're
they're still here.
Now, Kathy, this has never been admitted by any state official, and I'm tired of looking in these newspapers and reading.
Take a breath. Take a breath.
Well,
Take a breath.
I just...
I know, but you're getting worked up. Take a breath.
I like how you guys take care of each other here.
Oh, thank you.
Well, Kathy, what do you think of that, ma'am? That is admittance to second-degree murder.
I think you're absolutely right, and I wish I was out of this hospital. I'd help you.
Well, let me say this. If they turn me down now for the Justice Department to come in, we got a problem. We got a serious problem.
Yeah.
I mean, a man that is a state attorney admits cover-up.
Well,
it was a murder, Jerry.
I still think they need to bring in the ground-penetrating radar in there.
I have begged for that.
I agree with that. They do need to do that, and they actually have other equipment now that they can use. That's much more technical.
Well, you know what? Captain Roden decided he was going to go with these cadaver dogs, and I argued with him about it a month. I told him...
They weren't even cadaver dogs. They were K-9 unit dogs.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, Kathy, when he told me he was going to put an end to this investigation, he was tired of it, I said, well, what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to put cadaver dogs down. I said, are you out of your mind? I said, you're talking a half a century here, and they just don't work that way. And then he calls Erin Kimberly, who is the one that did all the work at Mariana, and asked her about cadaver dogs. I've got the email. She wrote back to him, John, cadaver dogs most likely will not work. I have the email in my hand.
You know,
and especially won't work if you don't go to the area.
Yeah.
Huh?
If you can make a contact out to Oregon, I can do this for you. And
well, Kathy, let me tell you. Let me tell you what happened. I left my home.
Let me have a minute here. Okay, let me finish my thought. Okay.
Right.
Mike, if you could get a hold of Mike Emery, and Mike Emery can make the contact we need in Oregon to get in that cave and find out what that equipment was they used.
And
to find the bones and the that can be done. Okay, now go ahead, Jerry.
and we do have another
Okay.
caller too again.
I just want to say
and we
this,
have
Kathy.
another caller too, Jerry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead with the caller.
Oh, okay. Alrighty, area code, sorry, 417. Go ahead.
Go ahead, 417.
Hi, Kathy and Mike. This is Clovis. I got a cold.
Hi.
I got a question. I got a question for Jerry.
Jerry,
you said that while you were being beaten, you called out for God, and
Yes.
you didn't think He heard you.
No.
And I went through some horrific things as a child myself, to the point I was close to suicide. And thanks to Kathy and Janet, I pulled through it. And I had to think of one thing: why did God allow me to live through this? Jerry, He answered you, and you didn't even know it. You're here telling your story.
That's right.
We want to know what we can do to help you. He allowed you to live so you can tell the people the horrific things that were in there. God did.
Is that why they let Troy Tidwell still alive to be 92 years old?
It don't matter, Jerry. He's going to face God, and he is going to wish he faced you.
Jerry, you're not in his house to know. Listen, sweetie, you're not in his house to know what hell he's living.
Nope.
You really don't know. He may have demons visiting him at night, nightmares that he can't sleep. You don't know.
That's
But I
right.
went through some horrific things, and I always wondered, how can the man do what he did to me? Pray to God before he died and get God's forgiveness. And I was told I had to forgive him. I'm not asking you to forgive this man, but you're telling your story, Jerry, and you're waking us all up to it. Now I want to ask you something. What can we as the people do to help you?
Yeah.
Get this going for you? What can we do for you?
Pray. Just pray for all.
Spread the word about what happened. Spread this program. Let people hear it.
Get 3 or 5 of your friends to write letters to a pertinent agency, and each one of those people get 3 or 5 people to write letters. Stand up. Stand up and
Exactly. Make sure that this gets out on every radio station there is. That's what you can do. Get this thing going viral across the world.
Can I get can I get some of those pertinent agencies to write down so I can put them and numbers to them in the description of this video when I release it?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm getting a pen right now myself.
But
I've always wondered myself, you've got these guys that beat us and everything. You know that they had to be carrying some of this stuff home to their families. Their families knew what they were doing. There was no way that they came there, beat the children.
Families were probably
Billy, let Robert explain. Robert, explain to Miss Kathy and the public what happened to Troy Tidwell in his marriage. Tell him what happened and why he got divorced and why his wife divorced him. Tell him.
Well, that's been quite a while, but the way I heard it was the one wife that was interviewed, and I believe that was his first wife, her and her kids were scared to death of him.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
the other wife wouldn't
he was an abuser.
Wouldn't speak about him. She didn't want to talk to the reporter, and she said nothing like that ever happened, So that's
the mindset of that town is the way the people think in that town is absolutely, you would not believe how those people are.
Well, it's demon
It's
infested.
across the street from me.
Well, there was one woman that was talking to us, a black lady, that was talking to us when this story first broke. And she was talking to us, and we went back to try and talk to her again, and she actually told us, I can't talk to you anymore.
That's right.
If I talk to you, they'll burn my house down.
Yeah. It's totally demon infested with trying to hide sin that goes so deep nobody can even imagine. That's why what
Oh,
Clovis
yeah.
just said to you is true. We have no idea what their families are going through, but God does. And as long as we
Yeah,
keep
there's
that
only-
prayer on them, they're going to pay.
There's only one person, one set of people that are, that are trying to defend that town, and that's the people that live there.
That's right.
And they all know. So,
That's right.
They know what happened because their families had to have been bringing it home. Just about everybody that lived in that town worked at that school at one time or another.
That's right. Yeah.
There were people that had furniture stores downtown, but they were working at the school.
Yeah.
And then leave the school and go work at their furniture store. That was that guy Dappin.
Yep. Also,
So,
what was going on as far as we call inflicting enterprise, Kathy, that I noticed when I was on the football field many a day. They actually practiced when it was against the state regulations for us to be practicing because they wanted the upper edge. I didn't feel good about winning a conference that year. We had more practice than they could put in 10 years, and we slaughtered them. But that's immaterial. When I was on that football field, I would watch these trucks coming in the main road, which divided the black and white side. The sawmill was on the other side of us, on the black side. I would see all of these log trucks coming down the road, like Smith and Smith Forestry, Dudinky Dom's Tree Service, etc. They were going in there, and those kids were cutting those logs for those people, and somebody was making money.
Yeah.
It was not state trucks. It was privately owned, and I noticed that right off the bat. And I said to myself, it goes along with everything else. You don't know how heavy the betting was on us as football players. You don't know.
Yeah.
Football was their whole key world. When I got called into David Walter's office and told them before, when I got beat half to death, that I was not going to quarterback for that football team, they told me you'll either quarterback it or you're going to jail until you're 21 years old, right up here in Apalachicola. You ready to go, Mr. Cooper? Are you ready to play football? That's a fact.
Yeah.
That's a fact. They already knew I was an all-star quarterback in my high school. They knew all about me. Hell, I brought them I brought the baseball conference to win it. I pitched a damn two-hitter, the only one that ever had it at the school to win the series final. They knew I had an arm.
I thought you were going to take 15 minutes and then shut up.
Thank you.
I'm going to take it right now and be quiet.
Okay.
And you can't kick. Hey, you couldn't kick worth a damn either. I remember that.
Now you see, Mike.
Is there
Mike, now you
number
see
to
why
a
I like these
representative?
guys.
Yes, I do.
Is
Oh,
there
okay.
a
Do we have any
contact
other
address?
callers?
No, we don't. Not right
Is
now.
there-
Okay, guys,
Hey.
I'm getting so full of pain. I gotta quit.
Okay,
But
Kathy.
I have so enjoyed having you on tonight, and I'm going to be doing a lot of praying now, Jerry.
Thank
See
you.
how many
I will.
places you
Is
can
there
send
a
this.
contact address or number to call?
Can I
Or
can I
write to?
share something quick before we go?
Sure.
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 Jerry is a witness to this. When we were in Okeechobee having the so-called dog reunion, where they were out looking for dead boys that were buried 50 years ago, we were out front, and Al Pelfy from West Palm Beach, Channel 25 or Channel 12, I can't remember which. Anyway, he was interviewing me about the way they beat us. And I had I was demonstrating how they beat us, and I had this strap made. It was not as big as the one that they used, but nobody would believe how big it was. But it was very close replica. And the sheriff's department sent over their goon squad and said if we didn't put it away, they were going to arrest the reporter, they were going to arrest me, and we were all going to go to jail. And I just wanted to share that because the attitude in Okeechobee is exactly the mindset of the men who tortured and killed boys when I was there. And I am so sad about that because I was genuine, I still am, I suppose, genuinely friends with the sheriff's department there. But that attitude emanated from the investigator of the entire Okeechobee situation. So I have no faith in the outcome.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you what. Hey, brother, you do know that I'm going for help now. I'm going straight to the top for the feds to come in because of this cover-up.
Listen, and I want to make one more suggestion. You guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I suggest that burial property that you're going for, take it back from the BLM.
Yeah.
I agree right there. It should be done in wages.
Yep.
Unpaid wages.
Yeah, take it back from the BLM. They've stolen enough land from us now.
Yeah.
Robert, are you awake?
Yeah, I'm here.
I want you to talk. Come on.
Well, you guys, listen. She's getting tired and sore.
Why don't each one of you take 3 minutes, wrap up what you got to say, and then I got to quit.
Go ahead, Robert. Yeah. You're a good closer, son. Go ahead, Bobby.
Talk about the past or the future. The future is this, and I realized this in 2008 when I was up there giving my speech at the seat on the White House ceremony. I looked down, there's about 16 young people. There were 6 black girls and 5 or 6 white boys and white girls. Well, they were young people, in their 20s, And I realized that most of the people sitting there didn't know a thing about that White House that they passed by every day, didn't know the history of it. And when they let them all in there, that's when I heard them saying, "Oh my God, it must be true," and so forth. Because the place looks like a dungeon. It has just a dark, dreary atmosphere, and it smells bad. And those girls came up when we had lunch, and the black girls, and they came up and said, "We're so sorry for what you had to go through." And I thought, how odd, that these girls that were the descendants of peoples that we once had as slaves are telling me that they're sorry for what happened to me, a white man being beaten. And I never forgot their faces, And I realized this last year that the Mariana today is not Mariana 5-6 decades ago, that most of those people don't know what happened. And one of the morals of this story is these people that did these things 5-6 decades ago, and they had all the power in the world, they could do whatever they wanted, that they had nobody to answer to. People came for inspections, but we always knew they were coming, and so did they. But what they did was they set up their children and actually their great-grandchildren. This was going to drop on them like a bomb 50 years later, when the White House story was told. And it's cost them their school. Their school was closed. It destroyed their economy to a good deal. And they've been in the press vilified for, going on 8 years, just because of a handful of people through those years. There was no more than 7 or 8 at a time, when you think of it in terms of decades, that were doing this. And if they'd have taken those men out, that place would have been a beautiful place for kids to be rehabilitated. And Lennox Williams, the one that was the biggest proponent of using the whip, when they did stop it, when O.J. Keller came down there and confronted him and stopped it, he said this to a reporter. He said last year, and he was talking about the last year they used the whip, he said 123 boys ran. He said this year, and that's when they went to talking in group therapy, he said 13 boys ran. And I thought, well, that don't make any sense. Why wouldn't they all just run off, And I talked to somebody, and I don't remember who it was, but they said a lot of the boys ran because they were afraid of getting a beating.
That's right.
And I thought that's true. You know, they all they saw was woods, and they thought they could get out of there. I'll run all night. They can't catch me. Well, they never had a chance because the citizens of Marianna went boy hunting back then. Those farmers would jump in their trucks, and they would park along these roads and railroad tracks, and they would wait for them. And when they crossed it, they turned their lights on, and they had them.
Oh, God.
Also, Kathy, they put the dogs on us. They put the dogs on us.
Well, there was a place worse than the White House, and this came out of the lips out of a Marianna resident who's probably dead by now, Calvin Creamer, and it was David Osborne from the Irish Independent, called me and said, I'm going to Marianna. I'm going to interview 4 old men that live behind Dozier. And this one said, quote, they were mean men to begin with. When they caught them, they'd strip the boys down and tie them over 55-gallon steel drums in the woods, bare naked. Then they'd beat them. And the police didn't care either.
Oh, my
and it
God.
only came to me about a week later. I thought to myself, when we were beating on that bed was going down 8 inches, you know, into the spring as that thing was hitting you so hard. These boys were beat against steel. And you can't tell me that they all came out of there alive.
They did.
Because that place made the White House seem civil when you think about it. And what were citizens doing chasing down juveniles?
You know, they had,
let's add one other thing to this, Kathy, because it hasn't been mentioned tonight. We have 55 bodies or so at this time. Robert and I, over the last 4 years, have found, what's the number, Bobby? 182, 181, somewhere in there?
Of what, bodies?
Boys missing.
Oh, boys missing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Andrew Kuehl, who was a researcher for us, and he found a ledger, and it had 178 boys' names in it that ran away. And it had their parents' name, where they were from, their address, and all that, when they escaped, how they were caught, and so forth. All pages were blank except for 11 entries.
In other words, where are they at, Kathy? Where are they at?
Well, I can tell you what I would guess on my investigation down there. There is a tunnel system that runs underneath the Mormon church. Runs all the way up into Canada. They're usually shipped through those tunnels, and then they're taken out into other countries and they're used.
Wow.
you know, they had a boy that ran away up in Marianna, and a sheriff's deputy was chasing after him.
Raymond
And he
Phillips.
fired 3 warning shots, and one of them hit him in the back of the head.
Blew his head off.
And that was the end. That was the end of their investigation.
My God.
And the boy was running away, not armed.
16
And they
years
never
old.
said anything about it. 15.
Raymond Phillips, Kathy.
Okay, I got that.
That happened when we were there, Billy. Billy?
Yep.
That happened in 61 when we were there.
That's exactly right.
But here's something nobody's brought up.
In the show.
You wonder where the violence come from.
I tried to be invisible.
The most
You tried to
eye-opening
be-
thing that ever happened to me, I have a grandson, and he came over to visit me. And we were sitting on the couch, and he was 13 years old. And since this thing has come out, you know, I was sitting there looking at him, and as frail as he is, I'm sitting there saying, that's what I was at 13 when I went in there, and they beat me like that. You know, and I've got to look at my grandson like that and say, that's what I looked like at 13.
Yeah.
What was this?
And I was that. Oh, I never said anything to him about it. It's just me thinking it. You know,
Oh, excuse me.
yeah, and you sit there and you look at a kid that's that age, and the age you were in there, and they beat you like that. Just imagine how that child would take it now.
Oh,
Well,
You know,
children
and
today are not the children we were.
I'll
Yeah.
tell you, until I was the age of 35, I did not know how to love anyone. I couldn't trust
Right.
anyone, and went through my marriages and went through all that too. And at the age of 35, I met God and I learned what love was, and that changed me. It just like changed me overnight. So I know that there's still hope for every one of us. I know that God had me to go through those things for just such a time as this, so that I would know what to do and how to help in the future.
Right.
And that's how I look at it. And I believe that we are about ready in the United States of America to go through some horrendous stuff. And we are going to see things we never thought we'd see in our lifetime. And so we're ready. This little group here is ready to fight. You've been there, done that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you can help many, you know.
Are you
You
talking
can't hurt
Armageddon?
me in my life any more than I've been hurt.
Right, exactly.
I can guarantee that.
And I think that God had to get me to the point where I was no longer afraid to die, because once you're no longer afraid to die, you're the Satan's worst enemy. He doesn't have a
Yes.
worse enemy. So,
Kathy,
yeah,
I'm going to say good night.
yes,
Jerry?
thank you.
Good night, Robert.
Okay.
Robert,
Night, Bill.
Gary.
Good
You guys,
night,
good
my
night.
brother. Good night, Bobby. Good night, Mrs. Kathy.
Thank you
Good
all.
night, everybody.
Kathy.
God
And
bless
thanks
you
for
all.
having us.
Oh,
Yes.
I enjoyed it.
And
And
this is-
tomorrow,
and this is,
Mike,
good
can
night.
you have this show out for them tomorrow so they can get it
It'll be
ready to go?
it'll be put up in the
All I
morning.
want is one promise, Kathy.
Okay. Uh-huh.
You'll get this thing out to as many people as you possibly can.
We're going to do it. We're going to do it.
Thank you.
Might be a little slower because I got to have surgery tomorrow, but
That's all right.
we're going to get it done.
I'll have it.
God
you
bless,
are.
God bless you. Kathy, God bless you
Good
for
night.
what you represent. Okay?
Thank you.
Take care, y'all.
God bless you too.
Good night, Jerry.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Love you guys.
Good night.
Love you,
You
too.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Wow. That's probably one of the hardest things I could sit through. Kathy's a very tired woman, and I would normally and would have liked to ask her to take us out in prayer. But I think I can handle this one. Please join me. Father in heaven, you know, there's a lot of people that spoke a lot of things. But I don't know that there could possibly be any more pain, any more everlasting pain than Dad experienced as a child. That kind of pain can rip apart an entire lifetime of not just one person, but everybody around them as well. I ask you, please, please, in the name of your Son, show the men that were on the show tonight, the men that weren't on the show tonight, and the men that couldn't be on the show tonight, some mercy. Please, Lord, show them what love is. Show them what strength is. Show them what their path is. Most of all, show them that they're worthy. We love you, Father, and we love them. In Jesus' name, amen.